Hey, good afternoon. Hey, Amis. Hey, Jamie.
Hiya.
Nice to see some familiar faces. How are you both?
Well, thank you.
Good. Right. Also, welcome to Zena. Zena, is that how I say your name? Hey, nice to see you. Nice to meet you. Oh, more and more people coming now. I did start to worry that no one was going to come. Let's see. So, Federica's here. Good to see you again, Federica. Hope all is well with you. Hafsar, I don't think I know you. Nice to meet you. Hope you're all right.
Hello.
Hello. I hope I'm saying your name correctly as well. And Ross, nice to meet you, Ross. I don't think we've met either. So my name is Dr. Taylor. Some of you know me, some of you don't. If you can put your cameras on, you want to put your cameras on, please do. Yeah, the whole point of this session is for me to tell you about A-level psychology that we do at CHS. Please interrupt me if you want to ask anything or if there's something not making sense. It's going to be an informal kind of taster session. There are many things I want to tell you about and show you, but feel free to interrupt as and when you think of something, or if you have a question. I really don't mind, because the more that I can help you today, the easier it will be for you to decide whether you want to take psychology. And so, yeah, that's really how it's going to work. I will give you my email address, and you're quite welcome to contact me on Microsoft Teams as well. But let me do that first before I forget. .taylorstationsonline.org.uk. So you've got my email. If you feel like you want to ask me something, maybe you forgot to ask me something in this hour, or you don't want to ask something in front of everyone else, you can always drop me a message on Teams or email me, dr.taylor@chsonline.org.uk. Well, so where to start now? I mean, kind of split really, aren't we? We've got half of the people here more or less have studied psychology with me already at GCSE level, so I probably don't really need to ask you guys what is psychology, because if you didn't know by now, then that means I haven't been teaching you properly. And the other half, Xenia, Hafsar and Ross, maybe I could sort of talk a little bit about that with you first of all. Maybe you've already looked into this subject, maybe you already have an impression of it, yeah, what do you guys think it is? Specifically Zena, Hafsar and Ross, what does it mean to you? What do you think it is? Psychology.
Is it like studying like thought processes maybe? Or I don't know.
Yeah,
specifically at an individual, what an individual is thinking.
Yeah, both of you are correct. Absolutely, that's a big part of it. We do study the way individuals think, and when we put all these individuals together, like you and I, we can study group behavior as well, the same way that they will in sociology, if any of you are studying that. But yeah, Ross and Hafsa are right. We might be interested in people's thought processes. Absolutely. So I think this definition is probably one of the best ones we could find. The scientific study of behavior and mental processes and how they are influenced or affected by an organism's physical state, mental state, and external environment. I'm using this PowerPoint for the first time, so apologies if there's any typos in it. I haven't sort of vetted it yet, but yeah, absolutely. So we essentially study the mind and behavior, I would say. The mind and behavior. It's quite hard to understand the mind because we can't really measure it directly. We just have to kind of observe behavior from humans and maybe animals as well, and try and make sense of things that Ross was talking about, thought processes, studying thought processes in individuals, as Hafsa said. So yeah, that's really what it comes down to: human behavior, thinking, maybe other things as well, you know, emotions, how behavior and emotions overlap with our biology, how they overlap with the way others influence us in the real world. So it's quite a big subject, and Federica, Amis, and Jamie would be able to vouch for that, I think, because what we've done in GCSE has been quite varied. There's quite a lot of areas of psychology. It's not kind of like one unifying subject, you know. Yes, each area is interested in studying behavior and thought processes and so on, but the way that we do that in psychology depends on lots of things. So some psychologists will take on a very much a biological view of understanding behavior. Some will say that all behavior is explained by a brain chemical that you have, or a gene, you know, genetics. Other psychologists might tell you that actually the best way to understand behavior and thinking is to look at the environment, you know. So it's a bit of a mishmash, and I think a lot of people like that, but then to be fair, a lot of people might find that difficult as well, because each topic seems quite different from the last, if you like. Each area of psychology can be quite different from other areas, you know. So yeah, I don't know, Amis and Jamie and Federica, having studied it a little bit already, and just want to double check, Xenia, Hafsa, Ross, have you studied it before at all, or maybe at another school or something? I'm not sure.
Not at all.
Not at all. Okay, thank you, Ross. Yeah, how about the rest of you?
Not really, but I think I know a little bit about it so far.
Yeah, you're probably
Just
right.
studied
You probably
as
do.
well.
What's that? Is it new for you as well, Xenia?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, interesting. Well, hopefully I won't put you off of the subject by the end of this hour, but, you know, equally, I won't be upset if you say to me, I've heard what you've had to say about it, and look, I'm undecided, you know, no decisions have to be made today. You know, do your research, have conversations with with your parents, with students and so on, and you can always email me again and say, look, I'm interested in this part of psychology. Do you think that that's enough for me to take on the whole A level? So, yeah, bit of a big subject, quite varied. Maybe you would like that, maybe you wouldn't. I don't know. It's hard to predict. But essentially, in the A level, year one is kind of divided into 4 key areas of psychology. Okay, and this would be the biological area of psychology. So I'm just skipping through because, as I said, I haven't used this PowerPoint before, but some of it will be useful to us. Some of it I might actually ignore. But essentially, yeah, we look at 4 areas of psychology: biological versus cognitive versus learning approach versus social. Okay, so 4 different areas in year 1. And the way that Cambridge do this, by the way, this would be the Cambridge syllabus. So Federica, Jamie, Amis, you're used to AQA psychology. We actually moved to the Cambridge syllabus for A-level, rightly or wrongly. That's what we do. Okay, so it's designed very differently to what you're used to, and the rest of you, if you take on A-level, you know, you're not going to know any different, are you? So there are 12 research studies that we focus on in year 1. That's most of the work that we do. So if you go to university, you will be looking at research studies a lot. You know, you'll be doing that a heck of a lot, and I suppose it's quite good practice to do that at A-level level. A lot of students haven't read any scientific articles until they join university. You know, that's typical. Maybe that's changing a bit now, but with an A-level like this, it gives us the opportunity to explore research articles. So, you know, that kind of gives you a good skill set, I think, to take you forward into, you know, university. And I kind of wanted to say a bit about that as well, in case you're wondering, well, maybe you're interested in A-level psychology, but you're not seeing necessarily how that will help you in the future. I don't know if anyone's thinking that or not, but, you know, it's worth pointing out as well. And you can see a lot of this stuff on the school website as well, where we've, you know, explained what's happening in each subject. But essentially, I mean, I'm going to be biased, aren't I? I will say this, but a psychology A-level is widely accepted. It is something that can give you the points that you need, or help to get you the points you need to go onto a university course, of course. It is taken seriously. It is a science, you know, a human science, a social science, but still a science nonetheless. It's something that can give you quite good transferable skills, because one thing that we do is we spend a lot of time analysing those 12 studies and thinking about the strengths and weaknesses of them, as well as, you know, understanding what the 12 studies have done. We try and evaluate them as well. And I think the A-level will prepare you with those kind of skills to take you forward into university. You know, it's not the only A-level that does that, don't get me wrong, but most A-levels will try and give you practice to evaluate and criticize things. And this is good. I think this is a good thing. I think it encourages you to be very critical of psychological phenomena, findings, you know, rather than just accepting everything for what it is. So those of you that studied GCSE with me, I mean, you'll know that we try to work on those skills in the last 2 years. So we'll be doing more of that in the A-level. You know, the key difference for those of you that have already been studying psychology is that, yes, it gets harder, and B, it's a different syllabus. And in year 1, there's just this more emphasis on certain research. You know, there are 12 key pieces of research that we tend to focus on. But a lot of it, you know, you'll be reminded of. You'll have a memory of different concepts, you know. And today, you know, we haven't got time to go through everything. I can't really say everything about the A-level, but I'm trying to tell you what I think are the most important details, so that you have a strong think about it and think, is this for you? You know, so it ticks the box in terms of you'll be, you know, a stronger researcher. You'll be a stronger student. I think it's interesting as well, but you'll come away with several skills. You know, your ability to describe research, your ability to apply psychological research, and your ability to evaluate. And that one in particular, I think, is a really useful transferable skill that will equip you to go on to university or any other plans you may have. So I think it's really good in that sense. So generally what we do is we go through studies, we go through issues and debates. Now, in psychology, people like to discuss and debate quite a lot. I'm a big fan of that. Those of you that have worked with me already will know that often I just like to hear your opinions about a psychological concept, even before we've looked at any actual evidence and syllabus stuff. I just like to get your view, because in a way, who was it who said it earlier? I think it was Hafsa. In a way, you probably do know some things about psychology already, because you've already had some of your life. So you've taken time to observe how people behave around you. Maybe you've sat there and thought, why do I think like this? Why do I do things like this? Why do others think like this? Why is it we don't think the same? It might be boring if we all thought the same and behaved the same, I guess, but you can still question, why is it some people think similarly to you and others don't? So debate and discussion are just one of the many kind of activities, I suppose you would call them, that we do in class. So, you know, I'm not going to suggest that my classes are that different from other classes, but, you know, we try and mix things up a bit, and we try and have discussions. We use PowerPoints like this. We use YouTube clips. We use mind maps. We do practice questions. We do multiple choice questions. Just the things you would probably expect me to say. We do all of those things. I might send you links to TED Talks and things like that online. And if you guys are interested, I do have a reading, listening watch list that I can give you if you like, if you feel like doing some prep over summer for psychology, if you're sure you want to take it on at A level. If Amis and Federica and Jamie are sure they want to hear my voice for another 2 years. So I wouldn't blame you if you didn't. It's okay, I won't be offended. I'll try and put a different accent on maybe. But yeah, I can give you that if you want at the end. I'll post it up as a sort of a reading list, and I've tried to pick out websites, podcasts, YouTube clips or channels that I think might be interesting, you know, and some of them aren't very intimidating. Some of them aren't very heavy with the science. They're quite light actually, and could be even fun. And sometimes it's good just to do that. I don't know if you guys do that already in your other subjects, or if Amis, etc. did that in the last 2 years. It's quite nice to learn about a topic with a teacher, but then go and listen about it or watch something about it anyway, just almost for fun, or to see it from a different perspective, you know. But yeah, I'm going to flick through this PowerPoint. I'm not going to show you every slide, you know. I just want to kind of give you a bit of a heads up and not get bogged down in detail too much. So as I said, 12 studies, it's very manageable. Once we've gone through the first couple of studies, I promise you, you will pick up the pace. You'll get faster at dissecting these studies. The first one is always the slowest because it's a new experience. Yes, some of you, if not all of you, may have read articles before, but to really pull an article apart and dissect it from the sense of describing it, applying it, evaluating it, thinking about what has it got to do with classic debates in psychology, that takes a lot of time and effort, and you will get quicker at it because you'll gain more confidence, and we tend to extract similar things from each study, you see. So the 12 studies are divided into the 4 areas that I mentioned. Biological psychology, which of course, I think even those of you that haven't studied it before can guess what that's going to be about, including genetics, including brain functioning, things like that, hormones, you know. So psychology overlaps with biology quite a lot. The second batch of papers will be to do with cognitive psychology. That's kind of what Hafsa and Ross were talking about with thought processes, mental processing, thinking about people's memory, thinking about people's attention, that kind of stuff. The third batch of papers is to do with learning theories, and you know, there wasn't really a lot of that in GCSE, Jamie and co, so at least that will be a little bit more fresh for you. You probably will recognize a couple of the 12 papers, but not the majority, which I think is good because it keeps it fresh for you guys as well. Not just like, oh, that paper again, you know. Unless you've got old notes on it, it might come in handy. So yeah, the minority of the papers you would have heard of. The third area that we're doing, learning theories, learning approach. It's quite a simplistic area of psychology, actually. It's quite an old area. And you know, by the way, if you do come onto the A level, I will give you a history of psychology in our very first lesson. I'm not going to go through the whole history of it now, partly because we have people here that have already studied it as well, so it wouldn't be the best use of our time. But you know, if you join the A level, even those that have done psychology before, I will start off with, right, this is psychology, this is the history of it. But I think Ross and Hafsa and Zina, it sounds like you're following what the subject is in general, which is good. Yeah, so learning theories, yeah, that was an interesting one. Really, it's quite basic, though. It's just saying that we can learn about people purely from observing them, and that's it. We don't need to think about the way we think. We don't need to think about the brain. So all of that is put to one side, probably wrongly. But learning theory approach is such an old area of psychology. That's why it's quite limited. It hasn't really, it didn't really become that advanced. So we'll cover a few papers there. And then finally, social psychology, which is always a favorite, I think. I'm just going to show you one of the papers in a second. Yeah, social psychology, that is where you say, well, I wonder if other people can influence the way we behave. I wonder if the social context that I find myself in could influence the way I behave. You know, for example, Zina or Ross or Hafsa, I mean, have you noticed that you behave differently, or other people might behave differently when you're in, I don't know, a shopping mall versus somewhere more formal? Like, I don't know, have you noticed that people behave differently? I mean, that sounds almost obvious, doesn't it? But yeah, I saw you sort of nodding there, Zina. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for the thumbs up. Hafsa, I guess it could be, couldn't it? We could keep an open mind and say perhaps all of us here and humans in general might behave differently in different social contexts. And so what are the reasons behind that? That's what we're going to try and understand. And so I think there are some very interesting topics within that part, such as, to what extent will people be obedient? What makes people obedient? Can other people influence people to be obedient? Okay, so that's quite an interesting area of social psychology, but also some nicer parts where can we try and predict, you know, how why people help people? Why is it some people help some people, not others? Kind of pro-social behavior, helping behavior. Yeah, so social psychology comes at the end of year one. I'll show you a paper now. I'm not going to go through it. I mean, you probably have seen studies before. Don't worry if you haven't. Just sort of give you a quick look at this. Where is it? So, for example, we'll be looking at this study in biology. And, you know, each study tends to have different sections, like a summary at the beginning called an abstract, where they just summarize the key points of the study. And then an introduction where they introduce their research, followed by a methodology where they'll tell you things about who took part in the study. You know, was it humans? Was it animals? How old were the humans? Were they men? Were they women? That kind of thing. What they actually did in the study. So the kind of the procedure, did they use any tools, any questionnaires, and so on and so forth. Then the results. You know, we might get a graph if we're lucky. We might see some images, perhaps not in this one. They didn't feel like putting a graph in or a table. And then finally, we get to the discussion section where they kind of just wrap everything up and conclude for us. I mean, I don't even care too much about showing you the topic so much right now, but the point is that that's what we'll be doing. And we don't even tend to read line by line from each paper, by the way. You know, I'll give you all 12 papers. You can read them from start to finish if you want, if you sign up for psychology. But in class, we don't tend to read them line by line, you'll be pleased to hear. It'd be a little bit boring doing that, I think. I might ask you sometimes to, like, highlight something that you think is important in the study, and then you go through and go with your digital highlighter. That can be fun and interesting. So, but otherwise we won't read them line by line. I will give you kind of summarized versions of them, where it's just the key points of each of those sections. And of course, you know, we'll work from a textbook as well. You know, every A level usually has a course textbook, doesn't it? So I find the textbook really good. That's obviously why I picked it. You know, sometimes those original studies get a bit much, even reading them by yourself. So it's nicer to read from the textbook, I think. You know, they've done the work for us mostly. They've put it into nice sections with nice tables and graphs and things. So either way, I'll make sure that you feel that you have enough resources. I mean, there's not a ton of resources for Cambridge Psychology A level. There's really not a lot, but I will make sure that you have more than just a textbook to look at. Okay, but I strongly advise investing in the textbook if you can, because, you know, it will make your life easier. I think I told that to the rest of the guys in GCSE. You know, it just makes your life that little bit easier. But whatever I find online, I will send you. Mind maps, evaluation sheets, we can do those. You know, past papers, maybe practice questions. There's plenty of those around. And any PowerPoint I will send you as well. So year one is mostly the 12 papers. Now, that's not everything. There are also issues and debates to talk about. And, you know, I might ask the group sometimes to divide into two and cover each side of a debate. So I hope that you'd be interested in that and keen on that idea. I think it would be really good to challenge yourself, and particularly if you have to defend a view that you disagree with originally. So yesterday I did a debate with the L5s, who you will be if you join, and it was on the use of animals in psychological research. And so quite a lot of the students who were on the who I put on the side of we think that it's okay to use animals, privately or personally, they disagreed with the view that they had to argue in favour for, and they did it really well. You wouldn't have noticed that they were actually kind of disguising their real views. They were confidently able to argue, at least for 20 minutes, that actually, yeah, we're going to pretend that we agree with this view. You know, they were really good. They convinced me. So sometimes we'll do that. We'll debate. In year one, I'll put it in the chat box in case you fancy looking at it. There are 5 issues/debates. Okay, so it's not many. And what we do is we try and link as many of these to each of the 12 studies as we can. Okay, so I've put it in the chat box. You can click or download if you want. But one of them is just saying, okay, now we know about a study, like the one I just showed you really quickly. Can we kind of link that back to society? Can we link that back to the real world? You know, I think that's really important. I don't know why people do research in psychology that doesn't give any meaning to humans, to other humans. What's the point in it? You know, all right, maybe for curiosity's sake, but surely the research has to be able to tell us something about how we can help other people. You know, maybe, if possible. So one of the issues is to do that, really, is to think, what has the research got to do with society? Okay. One of the other things is nature versus nurture. Now, this is a classic debate in psychology, nature, nurture, and I think I could probably go back to that PowerPoint. I think these debates might be in there as well, but you know, guys that have studied this before will have some working understanding of this already, and will tell you that, well, very sort of crudely, what you can do is you can say perhaps all human behavior is determined by our biology, and then you would be on the nature side of the argument. Okay, but conversely, maybe you think actually all behavior and thoughts and emotions and everything we've talked about, maybe all of that is explained by the environment, by nurture. Okay, so have a think about that. Let's see where it's gone, because they started talking about it. Where's the issues and debates gone? Maybe it was back here. Whoops, no, not that far back. Okay, yeah. Well, there it is there, nature versus nurture. Yeah, that's it. That's a classic debate in psychology. If you study psychology at university as a bachelor's and undergraduate, there's no doubt in my mind they'll ask you to do an essay on that. You know, you never get away from nature nurture. It's this ongoing debate that I will ask you occasionally where you stand on the topic, even if we're not doing a debate. I'll ask you, what do you think? I mean, curious to get your views now, actually, even those that have studied psychology before. Where do you stand on this? Do you think behavior is better explained by, you know, our brain mechanisms, our genes, things like that, our hormones? Or do you actually think, no, it's the environment, it's other people in the environment, the way that we were raised by our parents? You know, does anyone got any views on that? Even if I've asked you that a million times the last 2 years, where do you stand on that? Someone old, someone new, I don't mind who. There's no offense saying old, you know what I mean by that. No, I mean, Federica, you're almost your own group, aren't you? Because you joined us, you know, a little bit more than halfway through, so you've kind of had less time studying it than, say, Jamie and Amis, but more time than Zina, Hafsa and Ross. So where do you stand on it? Has your view changed? Oh, are you muted?
Hi, okay.
There you go.
I think I'm really 50-50 on this.
Yeah, that's okay. You're allowed to be. You're allowed to say it's kind of both. It doesn't have to be one or the other. Yeah, could well be. Maybe it depends on things as well, like what we're talking about. If we're talking about, you know, animal behavior, maybe you're going to tell me, oh, well, that's more to do with nature and what their biology is doing. I don't know. I'm just making that up. Maybe you don't think that. Maybe you think within humans, with children, it's a little bit more nature as well, because they haven't had time to, you know, have a life and be having environmental experiences. I don't know. You might not agree with that at all. Hafsa, I'll come to you next, please. What do you think? Do you have a view on this? Do you think behavior is only explained by our genes and our biology, or not?
So I do think it's a combination of both, but I do believe in that the environment has to play a lot into it, because if you put two twins who are like completely identical onto like completely different parts of the earth, then definitely they would be different, right? Like in their speech, or like it depending on which family they grew up in. And that kind of tells us that the environment also plays on our like development and how we perceive the world around us, basically.
Very good. It's a good opinion that many will share that view with you. Yeah, a lot of psychologists have come to the understanding that we have genes, and these genes predispose us to certain things, but it's only if the environment triggers that gene will we start to think in a certain way, start to behave in a certain way. And I think that's reasonable to say that, you know. Yeah, really good view. Thank you. Jamie, yeah.
I'm kind of 50-50 on nature versus nurture. Like, once again, it really depends on what we're talking about in the environment. Like, for example, we've got cats out here in the country, and quite a few of them. But, like, even though they know that if they try and go into the house, they get sprayed out of a water bottle, they still do it, even when they see our cats being sprayed and seeing themselves being sprayed. I think that's just because they got raised by cats, which went in the house and didn't learn. But definitely nature there.
How did I know you were going to bring in a cat as an example? It's classic Jamie. Yeah. No, really interesting. It is good to have these discussions. Thank you for that as well, Jamie. And I kind of like to see how people's views change, having, as you have already studied it, and Amis and Federica to some extent. But that is just one of many debates that we will look at. And I won't go through all of them now, but there are other debates as well free will versus determinism. That's one that we'll cover in year 2. The idea about whether we think people's behaviour is purely determined by something, or someone, or people, or do we think that actually people have kind of full autonomy to do whatever they want? And I'd love to ask you that now, but I'm aware that there are other things I want to tell you, and I will ask you that one day, don't worry. But again, really interesting discussions to have, and I look forward to having those debates and discussions with you, because again, I think that's another useful skill to take forward into university and the workplace, to be able to debate without getting too emotional and upset if people don't agree with you, being able to realize that sometimes you can cross over to the other side of the debate, that there's no problem with that as well, or kind of sitting in the middle and saying, I'm quite torn, like a lot of you have with the nature nurture idea. It's perfectly reasonable to do that as well. Good stuff. Now, in terms of what I was telling you, so there's kind of 3 things. So we've got the 12 studies in year 1. We've got the 5 issues and debates, and then also, and this might not be good news, this might be neutral news, I'm not sure, but research methods. There will be research methods as well. And I know some of you love maths, maybe love is a strong word. Some of you tolerate it. Some of you have not made friends with maths yet. So what I can promise you is that it's not going to be too much on the math side, the statistical side. OK, it's not so much of that. It's more the research method side, where there are concepts that we need to learn and know how to apply. We need to figure out how well these 12 studies were designed. It's all very well remembering them and going, I think I know them, but we need to really pull them apart and be critical and try and work out whether each study was very well designed or were there holes in them. And there will be holes in them so that we have more things to talk about. They've picked 12 studies that are not perfect. No study is really. There's always weaknesses. So it's one of our jobs. One of your jobs is to think about the research methods. So typically in psychology, we run experiments. That's not the only method we use, but arguably one of the most popular ones, and certainly was traditionally. OK, if we're going to call psychology a science, you kind of have to show that it's doing scientific things. So it uses the experimental method sometimes. And you'll know a lot of the terminology. You've studied biology, chemistry, physics, math. You'll hear some of these words come up again, like theory, hypothesis, experiment, testing, variable. And yeah, it's similar in psychology. A lot of overlap with the other sciences. So we try and use the experimental method because in psychology, we want to be able to say, well, OK, I think something's going to happen. I think that, when it gets warmer outside and summer kicks in, about time too, ice cream will go up in sales. More people will buy ice cream. And that's great. That's an interesting hypothesis. Wonderful. But as a psychologist, you wouldn't just accept that. You wouldn't just take my word for it. You would go and conduct some research. You would go and try and find out whether I'm right or wrong. And that's why research methods, you can choose a different method to answer that question or that hypothesis, that guess. You can go and do a survey, a questionnaire, and ask people, how much ice cream have you bought in winter, in autumn, in summer, whatever seasons you like. You could stand outside an ice cream seller, place, van, shop, whatever, and observe how many people buy ice cream in different times of the year or different times of day. It's about gathering data. That's what we do in psychology. We test our ideas by gathering data, because if we don't get the data, then we're back to kind of philosophy. We're back to saying, oh yeah, I think that this will happen and that's wonderful. It's best to go and try and get evidence to support how you think people are going to behave. You might predict that men and women will behave differently in some way. OK, great, maybe they will, but you need evidence to back that up. OK, so experiments are the typical research method that psychologists use. You know, a lot of the studies that we'll look at over the 2 years will use experiments. I'm sure you will know how an experiment works very soon. But we use other methods. We give people questionnaires sometimes. We ask them how they feel about something. We might interview people one-on-one or in groups. We might observe people. You know, we might not be in a laboratory all the time. You might be out in the real world observing behavior. And so there's a real variety. And we have to talk about all of those in the course, in the syllabus. Okay. So to recap, year 1, and I want to talk to you more about year 1 today. I'm going to tell you a little bit about year 2, but year 1 is obviously happening sooner. So year 1 is a lot of studies, 12 studies. It does get easier. The first one is difficult, the second one is a bit tricky, and then you get into a rhythm. You know what you're looking for. There's research methods, as I just said. Okay, so we have to know some concepts. We have to know what methods psychologists use, like experiments, surveys, and so on. We have to know lots of terminology. A lot of it was in the GCSE. Those guys that did that, you'll be pleased to hear, so it will come back in. It shouldn't have changed in definition. And we also look at issues and debates. So 3 things that we do in year 1. Before I start telling you a little bit about other things in year 2, anything about year 1 that you're not sure of? Anything that you're curious about? Anything that didn't make sense you want me to say again? No? Okay, well, if you forget or you don't want to ask now, you can always message me, can't you? Now, year 2, I don't think this PowerPoint actually shows anything about year 2, annoyingly, but that is something else I will tell you there on that slide. You're constantly being tested on those 3 skills: your knowledge, your ability to apply your knowledge, and your ability to evaluate the knowledge that you have. So it's a constant check of those 3 skills. We don't do, I won't test you or we won't be working on those 3 skills every lesson. You know, some lessons we only do AO1. Okay, but as we progress, I will notice when your skill set is when it's ready to introduce a new skill set. And you'll be familiar with the talk of AO1, AO2, AO3. We use those words in GCSE, we use them in other A levels. This is not unique to psychology. Okay, your knowledge and understanding means, okay, what do you know about the 12 studies? Can you remember some details from the 12 studies, like the method, the results? That's what knowledge and understanding is. Can you define concepts, that kind of thing? AO2 may be a bit trickier. And again, you know, you may be familiar with these concepts from other A levels, other GCSEs, psychology GCSE. AO2 means that you take some knowledge and you try and apply it somewhere. You try and link it to perhaps some made up characters in a question. You try and link it to theory. Okay, we have studies, we have theories. Let's see if we can link the studies to the theories. All right. And the real world, linking your results back to the real world. I think that's important. And then finally, we have assessment objective 3, which is evaluation skills. So how good are you and will you become at criticizing research? Because just because these studies are published and have been scrutinized by other humans, it does not mean that they're perfect. There will be problems in these studies. So you might tell me, oh, yeah, I know there's a problem with the study. Perhaps the problem is that it's not ethical. Okay, wonderful. That would be a really good point to make. You might feel that the study wasn't very moral in the way it was delivered. It was inhumane, shall we say. You might tell me that the study is not very generalizable because they've only recruited male participants, and we're sort of wondering, well, why would they do that? Where are the females? Or the other way around? You know, how are you going to generalize your findings to society if you only recruit a very small part of society, or 50% of society in that case? But you know what I mean. So that's the thing, isn't it? We're trying to think, how has this research got any benefit back to the real world? Does it generalize? Is it applicable? Is it ethical? Is it reliable? Is it valid? So we'll be doing that. Now, let me see. What else did I mean, do you want to hear about exams? It seems a little bit premature, but you know what? I'll just give you a little bit of a thing. There are 4 exam papers. Actually, I suppose it is quite important. There are 4 exam papers. You will sit all 4 of them at the end of the 2 years. Okay, I repeat, if you take on this A level, if you join me next year, you're more than welcome. Look forward to seeing you. You will sit 4 final exam papers at the end of year 2. So there are no exams at the end of year 1 other than practice exams. We might even call them mocks. Okay, there are no proper formal exams until earliest at the end of year 2. Okay, there used to be an option where, you know, you could sit some at the end of year 1, but what we found was that those that chose that option were not doing very well on those first sets of papers. So we felt as a school, let's just have everyone doing the same, everyone examined at the end of year 2. Okay, so all of the year 1 content that we do, I will test you on it as a practice, as a mock, but we'll have to go over that again towards the end of year 2 to prep you for the final exams. Okay, and Cambridge are a little bit naughty. I don't know if you noticed that with your other subjects. They do like to start their exams a little bit earlier than other exam boards, I've noticed. Yeah, even April. I never thought April should be an exam season. It's called the June exam season, and some of the exams are in April. Like, very bizarre, very bizarre. But otherwise, you know, it's a good syllabus. I rate it. So there we go. So a couple of years to get through all of the content and to sort of revise over the year 1 content a second time. Now year 2, just double checking. I don't think there's anything else in here about year 2. No, I don't want to go into all of that detail. No, let's close this. It's too much detail, isn't it? Year 2, and I'll give you the syllabus. I'll put the syllabus in the chat box. Where has it gone? You're welcome to sort of peruse this at your leisure, but essentially in year 2, it changes quite a bit. So we cover 2 big topics. They're huge because within these topics we have sort of, you know, smaller topics and papers to look at. But essentially in year 2 we study psychology and abnormality is the first big topic, and the second one is psychology and consumer behavior. Okay, now, is anyone here interested in understanding more about mental health, either their own or other people's? Do you have a curiosity in that? I know we talk about it more in the media, which is a good thing. Even the royal family in my country talk about it, and that's good as well. But has anyone got an interest in it? Thank you for the thumbs up. Hafsa, thank you, Ross, for the thumbs up. Yeah, Amis, I was about to ask the old guys. I couldn't remember if you were interested in it or not. Yeah, thank you, Amis. Thank you, Federica. Yeah, well, look, even if you don't, I think you'll find it interesting the more you hear about it. And so that will dominate a lot of year 2. You know, that's how we start in year 2, and that will take us quite the way through. And so what we do is we tend to look at different families of psychological disorders. And I hate using the word abnormality and abnormal. I mean, don't shoot the messenger. That's what Cambridge have decided to call it. Okay, psychology and abnormality. But, you know, really that word abnormal is difficult to really sort of work out what that even means, you know. But what we'll do is we'll learn about 5 different families of psychological disorders, starting with something called schizophrenia, working our way through we end up with, we finish with obsessive compulsive disorder. So there are a lot of very interesting psychological disorders, I have to say, and the way that we do it, it will make it easier for you, hopefully not boring and tedious, but it will make it easier for you. We tend to take the first set of disorders and go, right, what are they? Are we comfortable with what they mean, how they sort of present in people? What are the symptoms? What are the characteristics? And then when we've done that, we move on to the theories and explanations of these disorders. You know, maybe we're going to explain schizophrenia from a biological viewpoint. Maybe we're going to explain it from a cognitive. You know, cognitive, by the way, just means thinking and thought processes, you know, like Ross and Hafsa said at the beginning. So that's the thing. That's the beauty of psychology. We can take one disorder like schizophrenia and we can try and understand it from many different perspectives within psychology. Maybe that's a bit messy and can be a bit confusing, but makes it more interesting, I think. Okay, and then we do the same, and then we go to treatments and therapies. Once we've figured out what a disorder is, how does it work, what are the symptoms, why has someone got that disorder, you know, what are the reasons, then we can think about what are the treatments and therapies available for these people. Okay, maybe drug treatments, maybe talking therapies, you know, there's quite a choice. Then we switch schizophrenia with the next family of disorders, and we look at depression and bipolar disorder. So different disorder, but same process. Symptoms, explanations, therapies. Switch up depression, replace it with impulse control disorders like pathological gambling. So different disorders, same process. Symptoms, explanations, treatments. And then eventually anxiety disorders, and eventually obsessive compulsive disorders. So yeah, bit of a mixture. You know, you'll find that topic, you'll see a lot of overlap, not just because we learn in the same order, but because some of the disorders overlap in terms of reasons for getting the disorders in some way. The second topic is the psychology of consumer behavior. So during that topic, we will study everything from, you know, what causes people to spend more money in shops, you know, and what causes people to stay longer in a shop. And, you know, with that topic, everyone here at some point has purchased something online, offline, both. So you already probably have some feeling about how that might play out, you know, and certainly how you would shop or how much money you would spend. So you could really give me some good insight from your own life experiences, I think. I would always encourage you to, you know, have your own view and opinions, and it will be helpful with that topic because we've all been consumers. I don't think I've ever met someone, maybe someone who was like in the royal family, they've never actually purchased anything, they've never even seen money, but everyone else has, you know, I presume bought something online, offline. And so we'll look at a lot of research and theory that tries to explain, you know, why is it that people spend money, or, you know, they're loyal to a shop or a brand, this kind of thing. We'll cover everything from the environment of the store. So the store layout, you know how in shops they'll put offers at certain points in the store to try and attract your attention. We'll look at things like that, lighting, smell, odor, music, temperature. All these variables have been assessed already, studied already. Since, like, I think the 1970s, the research became popular with shopping and psychology, and loads of people would be interested in that. People who work in marketing companies, shop owners, psychologists, general public. Kind of a nice topic, I think. The packaging of the product, I wonder if that's got anything to do with whether we actually buy the product or not. So maybe some of you here are thinking, oh yeah, I noticed that when I go to that shop, I really like the smell, so I stay longer, you know, like those soap shops, like Lush or somewhere like that. Other soap shops are available. So do you see what I mean? You know, all of these little nuances that maybe we didn't really give a second thought about. Trust me, other people before us have thought about this, and they've been researching them for a good while now, you know, so we'll get into that as well. And so there you go. So what happens is when you put that all together, we end up with 4 exam papers. Paper 1 is on the 12 studies that we'll learn about in year 1. You'll get various questions from those 12 studies. It's pretty much, I think I'm trying to think back. They might not cover all 12 studies in the final exam, but if not, it will be close. It will be maybe 10 or 11. if they, it depends how they design the exam, isn't it? But of course, we have to know all 12 just in case. In paper 2, remember again, you only sit these exams right at the end of the A level. But in paper 2, that is also on year 1 content. So that will cover research methods. Okay, and issues and debates, by the way, if you're wondering where that goes, you may get a little bit of that in paper 1. Okay, for the year 1 content. So there might be a question on nature, nurture or something, Now, the year 2 content, so abnormality and consumer behavior, that will be spread over paper 3 and 4. Paper 3 is, you definitely have to answer questions on both. In paper 4, the first part you'll have to answer questions on both, but then tactically, if you want to, you can just focus in on one of the topics. So, it's too early to say now, obviously, but close towards the end of year 2, you may get the feeling that you have more strengths with psychology and abnormality than you do with consumer behavior, or the other way around. I might notice that. I might tell you if I notice that. We might have a chat about it. If that was the case, if you really were much stronger with, say, abnormality over consumer behavior, I may advise you at the time in paper 4 to, when it gives you the opportunity in paper 4, just to focus in on the abnormality questions and drop the consumer ones, because you can be tactical. So we'll work that out as and when we get to it. But it's kind of nice to have that as an option, I think. You might not be enjoying one of the topics as much as the other. You may not feel that you're as confident with it. They give you the option to kind of go down the pathway of focusing on the topic you are more confident with. So I think that's quite nice. Only in paper 4 that happens, the final paper. So yeah, it's interesting how it works. Well, there you go. So have a look at the syllabus. I mean, don't bore yourself, don't read the whole thing back to front, but have a flick through. You'll notice that even in the year 2 content, what they've done now, they've redesigned it such that there will be a course study per topic. So if you'd done this A level with me, last year or the year before or whatever, it would have been worse, because there would have been way more studies in year 2. So fortunately, they've reduced things down, which is really nice for us. There you go. The only thing I think I haven't explained, I mean, have a look at our school website, have a look at the psychology section. I've tried to write how a psychology A level can help you going forward into uni or the workplace. If you're interested in doing any extracurricular activities, I know some of you do already. And if you're thinking of being a psychologist even, that's great, more power to you. Maybe volunteering with people with mental health difficulties might be useful for you, for your CV, but also for you to be challenged and even enjoy that as well, but I'm sure you could think of other activities to do that would be useful. Psychology's everywhere, isn't it? It's in business, it's in sociology, it's in biology, it's law. I mean, it's everywhere. It's just that in the syllabus, we've refined it down a little bit more. Entry requirements, it's really boring to talk about, but we are asking that you try and get, I think it's 6 Bs, I think it is, in your GCSEs if possible. But conversations can always occur to work around things if needed, if possible, if there's an option. And ideally, we've also asked for maths and biology as part of those GCSEs, again, if possible. I think if a candidate was strong and for some reason didn't get a B in biology, I think we can have a chat about that. But anyway, we put some requirements down. It's all on the website. Please email me or private message me in Teams if you want to ask me something. Oh yeah, one more thing as well. Please ask me questions now, guys, if you can think of any. I've got a little reading list here. It's up to you if you want to work your way through it, or some of it. Things to read, things to listen to, things to watch. If you fancy doing that over summer, if you know in your heart that you want to study psychology, have a look at that reading list. I think it will be quite useful. to you. If you're not sure if you want to study it, there's still time to decide, or have another chat with me, have a chat with mum and dad, chat to your friends, have a think about it. But you've seen now, hopefully, the impression I'm giving. It's a lot of studies, it's a lot of theories, it's very sciencey, which, you know, I think is a good thing. It will be interesting. If you study biology, you know, it will overlap with that. Maybe there's some useful things that overlap in each subject. If you study sociology or are thinking of studying it, there'll be overlap there as well. You know, we do typical things, homework, practice tests, things like that. There's nothing that different really in that sense. There we go. So before we go, any questions? Zina, anything that you're thinking of? You can always drop me a message if you want to ask me something later. Hafsa, anything, final questions before we go? Ross, same to you. Anything that you've been thinking of or not sure about? Federica, Amis, Jamie, hopefully you've seen how different it could be from the syllabus you're used to with AQA. I think it's different enough that you'll still be interested in psychology, hopefully, and you will be able to use some of your old notes. If you haven't studied psychology before, I wouldn't say that puts you at a disadvantage. I would say, you know, it depends on the individual, doesn't it? I think you might enjoy it more at first because it's new to you than people that have studied it before, but it's different enough if you've studied it before that it should keep your interest, you know, and you can bring your knowledge and your notes from your GCSE as well. Those of you that have studied it, it should be useful. Good stuff. All right, well, yeah, thank you very much. Nice to meet you, Zina. Nice to meet you, Ross. Nice to meet you, Hafsa. Nice to see you again, Federica, Amis, and Jamie. Hope you're doing all right. And you know how to get a hold of me if you need to. And hopefully see all of you, if not some of you, in September. Thank you so much, everyone. All the best. Bye, guys.
Thanks, bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a nice summer. Bye.
Bye.
Ciao.
Bye. 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 Bye.